6 o'clock p.m., call meeting to order. I will begin with a moment of silent prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have a quorum. Received a call from Supervisor Source. He's on the way. John Bullowa, I'm assuming he's stuck in traffic too. The affidavit of posting. This is a meeting of the Washington County Board of Supervisors. Prior to this meeting, public notice was given by posting a copy of the agenda in the office of the county clerk and emailing the agenda to the West Bend Daily News, which is the official newspaper. In addition, the agenda was emailed to CNI newspapers, Express News, Kewaskum Statesman, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, WIBD, WMBZ Radio, and WTKM Radio. The above action is in conformity with the state of Wisconsin's open meeting law. We begin with the consent agenda. I'm going to be moving consideration upon request reading of resolutions 2019 1, 2, 3, and 4 into the consent agenda as they are, those accommodation persons are not attending. So I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda. Supervisor Smisek. Okay. Supervisor Mary.
Wanted to practice right away.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Presentation of petitions. Petition 3, Planning and Parks Department rezoning of and shoreline wetland floodplain map amendments, Town of Polk. Who do we have to speak to that?
Good.
Good.
Good evening. We have in front of the Planning and Parks Department, there was an application made for a rezoning of a wetland in a shoreline wetland zoning district. This was brought in front of the Land Use and Planning Committee at their March 28th meeting, and the committee voted to forward that proposal to the full county board. And the amount of area involved with wetland is 6,300 square feet, approximately 0.145 acres. And staff had reviewed, the Land Use Division staff of the department had reviewed this project. This area being filled was an old, previously filled wetland area that was recently delineated by a wetland delineator. And based on Chapter 23 requirements, we found that the filling proposed for this area met all the requirements of the ordinance, and therefore we see no reason to object to it. So I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Are there any questions regarding this? Supervisor Merton.
Do we have a description of the area on a map?
Yes, we do.
Can we see that somewhere?
I don't have that on there. They have it on their iPads. Oh, it's on your iPad, Marilyn. There's a map on your iPad. Under the resolution, Marilyn. Yeah.
So that's further down.
Yeah, we go through the petition.
Yes.
Okay, do you have that, Merrill? Do you have that, Supervisor Martin? Right, we'll hear the petition, then the report, and then we'll go on to the ordinance. No question then? Okay. Are you satisfied?
It's still loading.
Oh, okay. Are there any other questions?
You got it right there, down.
Okay, it's up there.
You have to keep going. The actual proposal is further on. Yeah, keep going. Let me see the rest of it. There should be another one there yet. Okay, yeah, this one here. You can see, this is on Highway 60, just west of Highway 45, on the north side of Highway 60, just past Tilly Lake Road.
Name of the property?
MDM Properties.
And D is a dog or E?
D is in dog. You can see there's a proposed building there in gray to the north of the existing building. And the area we're talking about for this rezoning of a wetland is directly to the east of the proposed building. Yeah, there's a circle there in that area right there is the 6,300 square feet that is the subject of this petition. So that's the area involved. It currently is a degraded wetland, and as I said previously, it's been filled. It was filled previously a long time ago, but when the owners had a wetland delineator come out last year to do a delineation, he discovered that in fact that was technically wetland. But as I also said earlier, it meets the criteria for rezoning in the Washington County Shoreline Wetland and Floodplain Zoning Ordinance, or Chapter 23.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Phil, any more for the report, or does that encompass both the report and the petition?
Yeah, that'll cover it
Okay.
all.
All right, then we will consider 2019 Ordinance 4 Shoreline, Wetland, and Floodplain Zoning Maps, Town of Polk. I'll entertain a motion. Motion approved, Roger Kist. Supervisor Gouch. Any further discussion?
This is for 5 and 6, right?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, we did, the petition and the report were basically done at the same time. So now we're gonna, all right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? We ready for? Okay, we'll vote electronically. Motion passes unanimously.
Wait.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, see, Peter.
Peter? Supervisor Sorcy? Can you vote, please? Try again. It didn't take it.
No, that's your 10.
There you go. Okay, motion passes unanimously. Even though I jumped the gun. Okay, personal appearances, letters, and other communications. Washington County Drug Court presentation by Judge Todd Martins. Turn them up.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed summer yesterday. I thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to update you on what's been happening with drug treatment and the Washington County courts. I've served as an elected official, first as district attorney and more recently as judge for nearly 20 years. And I probably share this sentiment with you, but I'm proud of the quality of life we enjoy in Washington County, and I'm proud to have worked along with many others to help maintain and improve that quality of life in Washington County. And over the years, there have been many threats to that quality of life. But I don't recall any as deadly as the opioid crisis in our community. Speaking on behalf of the judges, every day in court, we see the damage. Defendants who come to court sick from drug withdrawal, overdose after overdose, children being neglected, exposed to drug abuse, children being separated from their parents because their parents can't or won't take care of them, addicts stealing from family, friends, businesses. In the face of this it's a public health, it's a social and a criminal justice crisis. In the face of this crisis, the circuit judges have decided that it's time to move toward the establishment of a full-fledged drug treatment court in Washington County. A little background about alcohol and drug diversion programs in Washington County courts. In 2006, the Washington County Sheriff's Department applied for and received a grant to fund an OWI Treatment and Alternatives and Diversion, or TAD, program. And that program was aimed at OWI second offenders, those offenders who were in the criminal justice system for OWI for the first time. The county also supported this program financially from the very start, and we appreciated that. The hope was that targeting these second offenders, those people who hadn't gone to jail before for OWI, that those people might better respond to treatment, and it was a way to get them in the door for treatment. So OWI TAD participants would plead guilty to OWI, but their sentencing date would be delayed so they could participate in the TAD program. If they successfully completed the program, that is, if they completed treatment, stayed sober, passed alcohol screens, did not reoffend, then they got a lower jail sentence recommendation than if they failed. In 2014, the Human Services Department took on the task of applying for the yearly TAD grant. And the TAD program, as it relates to OWIs, evolved over time in response to research that suggested that more high-risk drunk drivers, say OWI third and maybe fourth offenders, needed and would benefit more from treatment than most OWI second offenders. The research suggested that most people who get convicted for a second offense drunk driving don't reoffend regardless of whether they get treatment or not. They get scared straight by going to jail. So we always felt that the program, our OWI TAD program was effective, but we didn't have the data to back it up. So we partnered with the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee at Washington County to do a study of the effectiveness of the OWI TAD program. And that study established that TAD participants were 80% less likely to reoffend than non-TAD participants. So we had a program that worked. But Wisconsin, like many other states, has been shifting its diversion resources from alcohol to opiates and opioids, and rightfully so. In 2017, over 72,000 people died of overdose deaths in the United States. Almost 1,000 died in Wisconsin alone. That's more than died in traffic accidents. The opiate crisis has hit Washington County hard. We are a county that between 1999 and 2003 had 0 heroin cases, 0. By contrast, in 2017 alone, we had 159. Washington County also has the second highest rate in Wisconsin of babies who are born exposed to opiates and opioids. So we've got babies being born almost every day who are withdrawing from opiates. They're born addicted to drugs. In any event, because of the shift in funding focus, we learned that funding for the OWI TAD program was in jeopardy. It likely would not be renewed, and that we had to shift gears to a diversion program directed at opiates. So we did. In 2017, we transitioned to an opioid 12-month TAD program. And there's a grant in place that funds this program through 2021. But we also felt strongly that the OWI TAD program should continue. So we requested and received county board funding to restart the OWI TAD program last year. And on behalf of everybody in the criminal justice system, everybody who understands and observes the consequences of drunk driving, we thank you, the county board, for making this decision to fund this program. This program measurably reduces OWI recidivism, and it increases the safety of our roads. So our OWI TAD program continues for the time being. Our opioid TAD program has been running at capacity since almost the day it started. There's almost always a waiting list. And this program requires a guilty plea to a drug charge and an agreement to a deferred prosecution agreement. And this agreement requires the offender to maintain absolute sobriety, to submit to frequent random drug tests, to frequent meetings with case managers at Elevate, and completion of whatever counseling Elevate deems appropriate, from group counseling all the way to inpatient. This program also requires at least 2 return court appearances after treatment starts, more if the offender fails to comply with all the requirements of the program. If the offender completes TAD, the felony drug charge is dismissed at the 1-year review. So obviously, this provides a big incentive for offenders to complete treatment and to stay off drugs. And again, we're working with the UW-Milwaukee at Washington County to study the effectiveness of this program as well. But that's still in process. We don't have data on that yet, but we're going to get it. So we've implemented some programs that we believe will help. But our current opiate TAD program lacks some key components of a true treatment court, components that have been shown to be effective in helping people get sober and stay off drugs. 56 out of the 72 counties in Wisconsin have some form of drug treatment court. Traditionally, Washington County judges have opposed the idea of a treatment court on the grounds that it assigns non-traditional responsibilities to all the players in the criminal justice system: the judge, the DA, the defense attorney. There was a feeling that the judge in particular is required to play the role more like a social worker than a minister of justice, and it was not a role that the judges felt comfortable with. But recognizing the terrible toll that opiates and opioids are taking on our community, we recently unanimously decided to authorize the establishment of a pilot drug treatment court. Why? First and foremost, it's because true treatment courts work better. They build in repeated meetings with a treatment court team to discuss how offenders are doing. These meetings are followed by court hearings with the offenders. Knowing you're going to have to go to court on a regular basis and face the judge who could send you to jail it can be a powerful motivator to establish and maintain sobriety and to make progress in treatment. Second, our program is over capacity. Establishing a true drug treatment court will increase the number of addicts who can get treatment. Third, it'll get defendants into treatment sooner. There's a waiting list for the TAD program most of the time now, and that delays the onset of treatment. It delays the onset of programming. And the longer individuals are out and about in the community without access to treatment, the more likely they are to use. Fourth, state funding for court diversion programs favors true treatment courts. It's likely that when the current funding cycle comes up, we might not be able to get refunding. We might not be able to get new funding unless we have a true treatment court. Fifth, establishment of a true treatment court will open up sources of potential funding which we would not otherwise have access to, and it already has. Exhibit A is a recently announced 4-year, $500,000 grant, a federal grant for counties which are implementing a drug treatment court. The Human Services Department and Elevate are working on the grant application right now. We hope that the result is federal money for treatment here in Washington County before the end of this year. And we would not have had a chance at that money without at least indicating that we were in the process of approving and implementing a true treatment court. But most importantly, a properly implemented drug treatment court has been shown to work, to reduce recidivism, to help people get sober and stay sober. Sober people work. They don't get arrested. They pay taxes. They don't fill jail cells. They don't drive impaired. They don't give birth to addicted children. They don't neglect children they already have. They keep custody of their children. They don't steal from their family, their friends, or merchants. They live. They have hope. They contribute to our community. We have a great group of partners, the courts, the county board, the Human Services Department, the district attorney, the sheriff's department, the county administrator, the clerk of court, the Department of Corrections, the public defender, Elevate, the clerk of court. Albrecht Free Clinic has been a great partner. Washington County Treatment Providers and the University of Wisconsin have all helped us. We're all working together toward a common goal: to measurably improve the lives of Washington County citizens. to keep people off drugs and to keep families together. Now, I'm not saying that a drug treatment court is going to solve the opiate and opioid crisis in our community, but I believe it will help. This problem is too big and the consequences are too grave for us to do nothing. I thank the county board for its support, longstanding support of diversion programs, and we promise to work hard, work together to create and implement a drug treatment court that works. So thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Supervisor Kelly.
Judge Martins, I would just like to thank you and the other judges for the change of mind. Change is not always an easy thing, and it really shows how good our judicial system here is in Washington County when they can take the time to really rethink a very difficult decision and come to the right conclusion. And I believe this is the right conclusion. I look forward to supporting you guys.
Thank you, I appreciate it. It's never too late to do the right thing.
Supervisor Sorcy.
Thank you. Your Honor, thank you for all that you do. I talk to Judge Michael Abrahamian all the time, friend of ours, and do you feel that they bounce between Waukesha County and Washington County, back and forth? Because a lot of times they go through that program, they're cool for a while, and all of a sudden now they go to Waukesha and they get in the same trouble. Is it?
Well, I don't think they're looking to go to one county versus the other, but obviously the conduit for drugs in Washington County is through Milwaukee County primarily. As far as where the offenses occur, I think a lot of them occur when people drive to Milwaukee to get drugs, they use the drugs, and then they drive back to Washington County. Sometimes they overdose, sometimes, well, nothing good happens, I'll tell you that. But as far as bouncing between counties, I think it's more just where they happen to land or where they happen to get arrested.
Judge Michael seems to think that the thing in Waukesha is working out pretty well.
Yeah, I've spoken with Judge Abrahamian and Judge Domina, a number of judges, about the different populations which can participate in treatment courts. And the general thinking is that OWI offenders are a lot more stable population to work with than opioid offenders. You have to take a different approach, and the opioid offenders is a very difficult population to work with. They just have it's a terrible addiction.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Bullock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, I understand that the treatment for people, and then they stay outside of jail. What happens with the people who need to stay in jail because of other crimes they've committed? How are they treated? Are they treated on a daytime basis, then they're back in there at night, or can you explain that a little bit?
Sure, it's a great question. Eligibility for our current program and likely for the drug treatment court will be restricted to individuals, number one, who don't have any violent offenses. And if you've got other pending offenses, sometimes you can get in, sometimes you can't, but the other pending offenses can't be violent, they can't involve firearms, they can't involve any type of domestic abuse, anything like that. But we have been able to work with, and I'm talking with the district attorney about expanding the scope of offenses that are eligible for treatment in these courts, so that somebody isn't thrown out or restricted from participating just because they caught 2 cases at once.
Supervisor Krebs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You said 2017 there was 159 cases, if I remember right.
Yes.
What's the capacity of the current program or the future expansion if it happens?
Right now, our TAD program, I believe the capacity is 30 participants at any given time, and obviously they come and go because not everybody comes in at the same time. And it's a 1 year, it can be extended to 18 months, but it's generally a 1 year program. So the benefit of starting the pilot, even starting a pilot true drug treatment court, is that it'll expand capacity. We'll be able to get more people in, and people who are judged to be higher in need of higher risk and higher need participants. So as far as the specific number of additional people we can fit, I don't know yet. Part of it's going to depend on the result of this grant application. I sure would love to see some federal dollars coming in here, because that would allow us to get up to a full-blown treatment court, which would have an additional 10 to 15 people in it much sooner than 22, which would be the other, that's the beginning of the next state funding cycle for this grant.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Carr.
Thank you, Chairman. Judge Martins, I'm curious as to how many judges, in fact, will participate, and also what kind of training that the judges and/or assistants, the counselors, whoever else is involved with this whole program. There must be some kind of specialized training that you folks get
Yes.
in order to be able to do this well, so maybe you can explain that a little.
Yes, thank you. Again, some great questions, and I do appreciate them. To answer your first question, at least initially, I'll be the primary judge when I'm in trial, or if I'm out on vacation or take a day off or ill or something like that. There will be a judge who will be a backup judge. But most counties have assigned responsibilities for a treatment court to a particular judge, and that judge, along with the district attorney, the public defender, and other and law enforcement, usually some law enforcement involvement, Department of Corrections, gets highly specialized training. And we actually had a team that went to a training, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, when this was just a little gleam in our eye as far as starting the treatment court. There was nowhere near unanimous support for the idea of having a treatment court, but we went and got some training, and it was very good. It was very intensive. But our hope is to get our team to the training, because we can't start doing it without a training. The most important thing we need to do is to do this right. And I'm really antsy to get going on it, but I'm not going to do it until we've all been trained, so we do it right, because you got to do it right, otherwise it doesn't make any sense.
Supervisor Galitz.
Thank you. So what would be needed from the county to create that full-blown treatment court?
At this point, nothing. So, the reason I'm here is to kind of let you know that we're moving in this direction, and that we're pursuing non-tax funded, non-levy funded, funding sources for this. And at this point, and for the next year or so at least, it's going to be a pilot program. And so we're going to get our training, and we're going to start doing it. And fortunately, so many counties have this type of program that we'll be able to learn from their experience. So hopefully we'll be able to get up and running fast. Once we do get a full-fledged drug treatment court going and we decide to continue with it, then I know a lot of counties have a coordinator position that is sometimes run through the county. Sometimes it's run through the case manager, like this in Elevate or something like that. But at this point, we're going to use the resources that we have and figure out how to do this. And then maybe at some point in the future, we can have a discussion about additional support, that we might ask for some support from the county. But at this point, we're going to do it with what we have.
Well, thank you, Judge Martins, for your persistence and your fortitude, and it's finally come to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thanks. Next on the agenda would be 2019 Resolution 5, 2018 non-lapsing council. I'll entertain a motion. Motion, Supervisor Schleif. Your second, Supervisor Gonring. Do we have, do you need to speak to it, Margie? Are there any questions regarding this? Seeing none, we'll vote electronically on this. Motion passes unanimously. Next is 2019 Resolution 6, Adoption of Multi-Jurisdictional Comprehensive Plan for Washington County, 2050. Motion to accept. Supervisor Bossert, Supervisor Bishop. Who's going to be addressing this?
Deb is going to be.
Deb is?
I don't seem to see where she's at.
She did step out, she was sitting here.
She must have just stepped out.
Okay. Did you want to start with it and wait till she comes? Just,
I can pull up her presentation.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
there she is.
Sorry about that.
Everybody's waiting for you.
I was gonna pitch it.
That's awesome.
I was just gonna start going.
Sorry about that. All right. Is this going here? All right. Okay, well, I'm Deb Silsky, Planning and Parks Deputy Administrator. I'm going to talk about the comprehensive plan. Over the course of the last couple of years, I've been working with the Southeast Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission and updating our comprehensive plan. The comprehensive planning law was enacted in 1999. The county adopted the first plan about 11 years ago, almost to the date. And we've had 3 amendments, 2013 and 2014, and every 10 years we have to update it. There's 9 required elements identified here: issues, opportunities, housing, transportation, utilities, community facilities, agricultural, natural cultural resources, economic development, intergovernmental cooperation, land use, and implementation. So we've done quite an extensive engagement process with not only the public, but also the divisions and departments within Washington County, as well as, the County Board of Supervisors. We've had several brainstorming sessions with the County Board. We also have an internal technical work group made up of division managers and department heads that have been looking at the recommendations. We put together the preliminary recommendations, and then it was reviewed by the county board through the workshop that we had in October of last year. We had an oversight advisory committee that also looked at the recommendations, and then we held a public open house just a couple months ago. Through all of that discussion, we finalized the recommendations and then held our public hearing in February. So I really want to concentrate on the recommendations. This is a very different plan than what you've seen in 2008. I reduced the number of recommendations substantially. We were originally at over 500 programs, and we are now at about 200 programs. Those programs align with our 5 strategic goals that the county board has adopted. And we really focused in on the county authority and obligations. We organized them into programs that are current and ongoing, new programs, 5-year achievable goals, and then new programs that are long-term goals. But again, the comprehensive plan is just a guide. For all new programs and policies that are identified in the comprehensive plan, each one of them must be individually reviewed and approved by the appropriate liaison committee and the county board through the annual budget process prior to them being implemented. So how they've been organized is that we are utilizing, by law, we have to have goals, objectives, policies, and programs identified for each of the 9 elements. So what we've done is we've identified the county strategic goals as those goals and objectives, and then outline the policies and programs for each one of the departments or divisions that relate to those 9 elements. So the policy recommendations include highway, transit, land and water conservation, land use, planning, parks and trails, health, aging and disability resource center, emergency management, sheriff's office, county administration, and economic development. And with those policies and programs, when you're looking through the document, you may identify some policies or programs that let's say, the county administration might have, or emergency management. We did not include all of the programs that they do. This was not a list of like the priority-based budgeting where we have all of those programs. We only identified those programs that related to those 9 elements. In addition to the recommendations that we have for the county government, we also have recommendations for local government. As you know, local governments have the general zoning authority and are really responsible for a significant amount of infrastructure within Washington County, including the core services that are provided to county residents. So we did provide some recommendations for those local governments. We also provided recommendations for partnering organizations. I mean, as you know, we have many partnering organizations within Washington County, such as the Historical Society, the Veteran Services, UW Extension, and we provided recommendations for those organizations whose primary function and mission is really directed to that program. We also have our land use plan map. This is a guide for the urban development as well as preserving the agricultural and natural resources. It's a patchwork of our cities, villages, and towns. The county does not have general zoning, so we've relied on the land use plans that have been adopted by the cities, the villages, and the towns and created a patchwork plan for Washington County. I did want to point out, though, that there's a portion of the village of Jackson that was missing from the plan that was online, that was linked from your agenda, and it's a very small little portion. We'll make sure that we include that into the final plan that's published. And that's all I have. I'm open for any questions. We also have Ben McKay from Sewer PAC as well as Rochelle Bryn from Sewer PAC that can help answer any questions that you might have.
Supervisor Bossert.
Okay, I want to thank you for all the work you've done on this. In reading through this, there's a lot of references to public-private partnerships. I think that's important for the future of our county. I also saw a lot of references to cooperative relationships with other government agencies, be that local towns or nearby counties, and I think that's important as well. And of course, when we work with our local towns, for any of our leaders here who are on maybe their city board or village board, we need to work cooperatively, engage in good discussions as to how we can best serve our taxpayers and reduce the tax levy they face. I don't think the county intends to impose itself on anybody, contrary to a suggestion that was put out there last year. We're not looking to impose ourselves on anybody, but we are looking to work cooperatively. One thing I did want to suggest, and maybe this doesn't need to be in the plan, but on page 30, we talk about consolidating the Washington County and Ozaukee County shared ride taxi service. I hope that goes through. That's going to be excellent. I have one neighbor in my district who specifically needs to go to Port Washington on a regular basis and relies on the shared ride taxi program and will be thrilled to not have to sit at a gas station in Newburgh and wait 20 minutes for the taxi from the other county to get there. But I do think we need to go one step further after that's done and settled, and hopefully those are combined and that's successful. But after that's done, I'd like to see us, and I know I've mentioned this in the past, look at Hartford shared ride and West Bend shared ride and see how we can help the taxpayers by consolidating those as well. All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Supervisor Schleif.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also, I'd like to thank you, Deb, first and foremost. I sat in on only a fraction of the meetings, and it's amazing all the work that goes into this. But along that line, I know we've been working on this for a few years. The last one was adopted in April of 2008. Is there any ramification of being at 11 years instead of 10 years?
No, we actually had several amendments. There were 3 amendments in 2013 and 2014, and this, the resolution and the ordinance that are before you today is actually an amendment. So we're just fine.
Thank you.
Okay, Any more questions? Thanks, Deb, again, for all of your work. I mean.
Thank you.
The amount of work that went into this, you really have to appreciate, streamlining and going from, how many pages did we begin with?
Well, we're down 200 pages.
Yeah,
We're down
so-
200 pages
and
and
300
hundreds of programs.
So-
So,
Awesome job. Okay, seeing no further questions, we have a motion and a second. We'll vote on this electronically. Motion passes 23-2. Okay. Next is ordinance number 1 to approve the comprehensive plan. Entertain a motion. Supervisor Mahalik, Supervisor Hartwig. Any further questions? We ready?
Yes.
Okay, we'll vote on this electronically. Motion passes 23-2. Moving on to 2019 ordinance number 2, Washington County Staffing Plan, Planning and Parks Department, Golf and Park Division, and Washington County Classification Compensation Plan. Sorry, motion. Motion Supervisor Kiss, Supervisor Mary. Anybody speak to that? Or-
I am here to answer any questions if the county board has any.
Supervisor Gals.
Thank you. I understood the Parks and Trails Manager position and the Park Business Services Coordinator position. Was it considered, or could it be considered to have that a temporary capacity to understand through a course of a year or so, what the future needs would be? I know there was a supporting document that spoke to the need for it today, but some of it seemed speculative, so I'm wondering if we're creating a full-time permanent position, is that the right thing to do versus maybe a temporary position and really evaluate in the future?
We have no issue with that. Our discussions at the staff level have been that this position needs to be tied to revenue, and that if we aren't performing in the Parks Enterprise Fund, then we need to eliminate the position because we will not be coming back for tax levy dollars. So in terms of making it temporary versus permanent, I think that we're on board with the idea that this position should cover its costs, period. And if we need to justify that further, we would plan to do so. So that's certainly how we feel in terms of funding the position going forward. It isn't written or proposed that way, but certainly could easily be that way.
It is a position, as I understand it, that needs to prove itself in order to be maintained. So it really does kind of cover what you're speaking to, Supervisor Gallants, even though it's not directly stated as such. Is that-
Right, well, it is in the enterprise fund, which is supported by the parks revenues and the fees, and then right now the contribution from the tax levy, which is still currently going to that fund. So when we get to the 2020 budget in June, or June, July, summer, we're coming back to the committee for those discussions. At that point, we should be able to have some level of what the expectations are going to be in 2020 for this position.
So continuing that, sorry to belabor this, but so you determine that the revenue doesn't support it as indicated, so then how do you eliminate that position? Do you terminate that employee? Do you RIF them? What do you do?
Correct, we would terminate the position.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, we'll vote on this electronically. Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is 2019 ordinance 3, creation of park district for county-owned lands. Your motion? Motion Supervisor Sorcy, second Supervisor Bullock. Any discussion on this? Questions? Supervisor Merton?
Clarification perhaps by the county attorney. What does this language represent that it's added in there? You've stated before that items in state statutes are not necessarily put into the code, so what does this reflect? What are we missing?
You're talking in terms of this language number 11 and that
Correct.
follows it. Currently, the way our ordinance is written, it doesn't permit this kind of use of the park. This particular change would allow that then to occur per our ordinances.
It was my understanding that the code, state statutes reflected that the county could do this on their own. So what am I missing in the interpretation?
The county is free to zone its property the way it chooses to zone it. This clarifies that that particular use would be permitted in that particular park on a temporary basis. It'd be clear in our ordinance in that that's the power we're exercising pursuant to the statutory authority that we have under Chapter 59.
Supervisor Gonry?
Yes, I have two questions on this. Number one, I know it was brought up at a meeting before, but what is our liability by us doing this and by opening up, for this, whether things leach in from the outside or not, or if we're digging down too far and we get into some bad stuff? What is our liability, number one? Number two question is, have we done a SIB on that property yet?
I guess I'd have to defer to the Parks Department to find out any particulars about the project and how it's going to be structured. We've only, at this point in time, just my office anyway, done the ordinance change and modification. In terms of liability, we have certain immunities under the law, recreational immunity. I know there was an issue that was brought up at one point about what happens if someone's injured there, things like that. But short of that, it's something we're going to have to take a look at and work on with, in terms of contract language and things like that. I wouldn't anticipate any problems.
Because groundwater and everything else is a big issue today. You hear that talked about all over the place, and it's so hard to pinpoint any of that. And in this particular case, the reason we're doing it, we already know that there might be 2 cases within the immediate area where there is a problem. And are we just opening up that problem further? And I guess the reason I don't even want to vote on this yet is because we don't have those answers yet. Why open up Pandora's box here?
We do have a few slides prepared to specifically address particularly groundwater and can talk through some of the responses to the public comments if the board would entertain a quick 5 minutes.
Hello, Eric Hyde, Park Property Manager. So I'll cruise through this pretty quick, just giving a general update. So we did have the public hearing for this at the last Public Works meeting to allow for this. That's why it's here. We also had the mandatory on-site meeting for all the interested firms. There were over 30 people that came to it representing 13 different firms around the Southeast region. And proposals are due on 4/24, on April 24th. That's really when we get the kind of exact plans from the professionals as far as how they would operate the area, how they would commence extraction and all that kind of stuff. So that's really when we get a lot of the better details.
Can we dim the lights, please?
You want them dim further?
So I've just got a couple maps here that I just prepared if anyone had any questions further. But I'll go to this. This is a groundwater map. So this is the most accurate one we have. This map was created by the use of over 8,000 private wells in the area. What it shows is the elevation of groundwater at mean sea level. So it basically just shows the groundwater level underneath the entire county. It's pretty defined in that area that it moves from basically a west to east. You can see the color shading from white purple towards the yellow to the green. That's the direction of groundwater. It's a little hard to see, but basically where Heritage Trails County Park is, there are a couple remediation sites. Those are all over the county, anywhere there was any old landfill, any dry cleaners, anything like that where people are dumping anything in there. I've seen the reports from there. It's northeast of the park. The groundwater flows to the east. All their monitoring wells show the expansion of the plume of the atrazine in there. It's following the railroad tracks. Your top layer of groundwater basically follows your surface water. All the elevation, everything pitches that way. It's expanding exactly as you'd suspect. Sand and gravel aquifers are very porous. They're very easy to predict. We got the soil borings, and we basically hit clay at 15 feet below the water level. Everything above that was all sand and gravel. So the clay is very good at protecting any of the wells below that. It basically acts as an aquitard. Water generally starts to move to the east after that.
How many sites do you have?
That's basically the main one. Otherwise, I don't really have too much more.
You said we had a number of sites. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Okay.
A number of slides, sorry.
Oh, no, I was talking about sites, the bad sites that you have with the atrazine. Do you have a number on that, or did I miss that? I'm sorry.
So there's one site directly north, and there's one that's even farther to the northeast that's flowing away. So in the county alone, I mean, there's hundreds of what they call remediation or reclamation sites like this, all varying levels of how they're closed or how they're being monitored and stuff like that. So as far as environmental regulation, this site does not skip anything that any other mine would have to go through. It still has to go through all the DNR regulations, get their wastewater permitting, the DNR reviews, stuff like this. So that's not really this level of government to do that. We can require monitoring wells, and we're looking at having monitoring wells installed on the north side of the park so that we can monitor it for any trace expansion of the plume. Yeah, that's pretty much all I had for you, unless you have further questions.
Supervisor Martin, sorry.
Yes, I have another question. At the public hearing, it was noted by several people about a timeline, and it does say here only temporary. So what does temporary mean?
We've been going along with the 10 to 15 year time limit. As far as the proposals, when they come in, that's when we'll really know what kind of timelines are being proposed, and that's something that we'll have to evaluate. That's being evaluated in the scoring. We're looking at setting an escalating lease to try to make it a financial incentive for the operators to continue. But that's, I mean, as far as predicting recessions and stuff like that can affect the demand. I mean, it's a supply and demand market.
Pardon?
So it's as far as predicting things like recessions that would slow down the process, because this is I mean, sand and gravel is a supply and demand market. So to put an exact date on a quantity like this is just not realistic, really. And then as far as applying, specific penalties to that, that's also something that we'll have to look through the contract stage.
But that will not come back to the board for making a decision. That'll all be done in committee?
The contract itself will be completed. This ordinance, basically authorizes the change in zoning. So the contract itself is a separate issue that was approved at a previous meeting. So the contract and all of that is already in process. This is the last step in the process for county board approval.
To have a say.
It doesn't come back to the board, to answer your question directly.
Supervisor Carr.
Yeah, one of the complaints that appears to have been registered by the folks who live in the vicinity is for dust. And we know, based upon the project plan here that's been set forth, that much of this gravel and sand extraction will be done underwater, because that's how you create a lake. So how long will it be before they hit groundwater and there won't be any dust? I'm curious about that.
So most of the extraction will actually take above the groundwater level. So right now, the top elevation of the soccer field is about 70 feet above groundwater. So they have to extract 70 feet of material to get to groundwater, and then from there, given the level of clay, which isn't going to be valuable, they're only going to go about 10 to 20 feet through most of the water area. So that's going to be 20 feet is going to be your maximum depth. We have a minimum requirement in there for how much of the lake actually has to be 20 feet deep, and that's just to, support a good fishery and stuff like that. So, yeah, that'll be towards the end of the project as far as when they hit in the groundwater. And that depends on the plans that are submitted.
Thank you.
Sure.
Supervisor Brandt?
I'd just like to point out that the village of Slinger has rather large gravel pits to the north and to the south. And we certainly don't have any effect of dust and what. And I know the operators of both those gravel operations, and they use water misters and whatnot on the separators and the conveyors and things like that. So, a lot of rumors can go out there about how terrible a gravel pit is, where in fact they are pretty good neighbors. Would I want one right up to my property? No, I'll have to admit it's going to be probably a noise thing during the day, but they don't operate at night. And I think some of that can be handled by the contract. And I would hope that when the contracts are written, that it takes into consideration the surrounding property owners.
Supervisor Gallus?
Regarding the prospective revenue, it did have a range from 3 to 6 million or so, and I understand you can't put a finger on that, but will the contract take the county's interest when it comes to that revenue generation? So if we're talking about downturn in the economy and fracking stops and there's no sand extraction, is there any, are we thinking about that in the contract? Do we price it based upon the aggregate that's pulled, for example?
So how we have it in the request for proposals, there's basically 3 revenue sources that they can submit, and they have to also do a summary kind of giving us an outline of what they think we as the county would receive based on. The first one is royalties, so that's a per ton basage, the per ton price on that comes out, which is probably in the 50 cents to the $1.50 range. There's also a lease that they can offer to pay, and then there's also any kind of other, any kind of lump sum or any kind of thing like that they can do. So that's how we set it up. We're not requiring all of that and that. The negotiations will take place to kind of, discuss that and get what we want in there. But those are basically the 3 ways that we're asking them to put a value on the material and the value that the county will receive.
Right, but to a earlier supervisor's comment about rumors being spread, I don't want to start those. I used a dirty word. What is the sand typically used for?
So, any development site, most of it's used for road construction and concrete.
Thank you.
Supervisor Kelling?
Just one comment regarding the dust, and I've seen the complaints and the worries. In West Bend, we have a massive sand and gravel pit to the north and west of the city. As well, directly across the street, we have a massive amount of building going on for a brand-new Mills Fleet Farm and also an auto dealership. So we've got probably several hundred acres right now that are wide open. I have yet to really see massive clouds of dust in that area. And in fact, I can tell you I go past there literally every day, at least 2 to 3 times a day, and it's very well abated. So I really don't see dust as any kind of issue other than somebody trying to pick something because they don't like the pit. I fully believe that if that massive work area in West Bend can be contained, this much smaller area will be certainly no problem for these developers. Thank you.
Supervisor Hartwig?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there any idea how long it'll take? Did you take a look at that? How many years it would last, say 10, 12?
So Yeah, 10 to 15 years is what we're looking at, but until we get the proposals back, that's when they'll identify what there is, and that's a key component of the grading criteria that we're using to select an operator, along with just general competency.
And then will we set a time, once we know, will we set a time limit when it'll, the gravel will be gone and it'll be restored as a park and finished?
So, I mean, the way they do sand and gravel extraction right now, it's not just you clear all the topsoil off the entire site and you just go at it. They work in chunks at a time. So, I mean, that's the most cost-effective way. That keeps the exposed area where there is potential for dust. So they work on 5 acres, they move the topsoil over, take everything out, and they go to the next area and they take that topsoil and push it back over and seed it. So it's an active reclaiming process. So one of the components that we're having them put in there is that portions of the park we want to stay open, mostly like the trails in the woods and stuff like that. So we have asked that they reclaim certain areas faster, that keeps expanding the area that's open to the public as we go. But that's something that we'll work with the operators to make sure that park users are safe and also the operators' interest and security is safe as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Supervisor Connery.
Yes, a major thought that I had here, are you intending on, or have you reached out to the township in the area to work with them in order to get the times that they normally leave construction work, the time zones, that type of thing? Something that where the people are used to, trucks can't start before 7 o'clock, for instance, or whatever like that. I'm hoping that you're working with the town that way to get those particulars.
Yes, we have, and this right here, this was included as an exhibit to the RFP that was sent out to all the operators. This is the most recent special use permit from the town of Polk's attorney from a different municipality that he's in. So we put this in there telling them that most of this language will be included in our lease agreement so that we cover and protect the interest. So whoever the operator is, they're not getting any special treatment or advantage that they wouldn't get from any other municipality. So.
Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My concern is it realistic, once this whole thing goes through and they get to where the lake is going to be, is it really realistic to have the park open when they're in that area for safety reasons and also for the operators' security and safety as well?
I mean, not in the specific areas that are under active extraction, those will absolutely not be open. So, I mean, there's 90 acres of a 243 acre park that are intended to be the actual open area. So most pits you drive by, you don't see. It's because they push all the topsoil because they have to make sure they have enough topsoil on site to restore the site. They push it up into a berm, they put a fence on top. I mean, that's the same kind of thing we're looking at as far as security. So it's really not too much different than any other mine in the area where they've got adjacent neighbors, kids in the area. I mean, people are going to trespass if they're going to trespass. So it's definitely a big concern and one we want to keep on and make sure that we're signing everything and keeping the area safe. But
Well, my concern is because the area for the lake is in the middle of that cross. So, I mean, we're really going to have to do some major fencing for them to get to the back side of the park, aren't we?
Yep, yeah, so basically where the current park road is, I mean, we're picturing the road ending right here, where the property juts to the east towards 164. We're envisioning this area right here as basically a temporary gravel parking lot for access, and then basically trails out to here. So this area here is the main part, and we definitely intend to adjust what's open and what's not. So in the beginning, there's going to be a lot more that's closed off until that area is safe, and then you kind of expand the area.
So who will be responsible financially to be changing those fences?
So that's something that we fully intend to put in charge of the mining operator, but that's something to be worked through in the negotiations of the contract.
Okay, thank you.
But, I mean, we're trying to make as much revenue from this as possible, so that's a key component.
Supervisor Martin?
Yes, one other question relative to the language in in the ordinance. It talks about, I mean, we talk about this being part of the park district for county-owned land. However, it specifically states Heritage Trails County Park. So it's not a general statement for a park district. It's specific to.
It is specific to Heritage Trails, you're correct. That was the intention.
Okay, any more questions?
Why didn't it say it on our agenda? It just says creation of park district for county-owned lands. But then you gotta read all. Doesn't matter. Yeah, but it's not on the agenda.
The item is on the agenda.
Okay, hearing no more questions, we'll vote on this electronically. You ready? Supervisor Bossert, Gunner, okay. Supervisor Hartwig, Supervisor Bossert. Motion passes 23 to 2. Next meeting date, Wednesday, May 8th, 2019, 6 o'clock PM. Want to remind everybody about the Friday's legislative breakfast. Make sure you make every attempt to go. We're going to have our legislators here. It's going to be a monthly event. It's really a good thing to have face-to-face with some of our legislators. It makes it a lot easier to talk with them and to have them listen to you even more. So the next thing is discussion item number 10, county executive discussion. I have this on the agenda due to the March 3rd opinion piece published in the Daily News. As to what potential form of government best serves the interests of the citizens of Washington County is currently part of the public conversation. I felt it appropriate to bring that discussion to the floor of the board. As important a decision as this is, it is essential to have as much input as possible, and your questions and comments from the floor will be important, as this will be on the agenda for the executive committee to discuss at their May 21st meeting. I'll open it up for any questions for anybody. Supervisor Bossert.
I think it'd be helpful if, and perhaps Attorney Stern would be the person to do this, if we walk through the differences specifically in all three forms and how this change will impact the board's role and the county administrator or county executive's role. So we have the best information to walk forward with as we make this decision.
And we are certainly prepared and able to do that, Supervisor Bossert. The big thing that's going to stick out at you is the fact that the county executive has veto power over legislation. But there aren't a lot of practical differences in terms of what we see as staff and county operations. They're very similar type of positions, county executive and county administrator. The county executive still oversees all the departments, supervises department heads, for example, prepares the budget, and so forth. So from an operational standpoint, we don't see a lot of change. Where it really affects all of you is in terms of probably a reduction somewhat in some of the power you have as individual board members. But we can get into more detail and answer more specific questions as this issue becomes a matter of discussion in front of executive, I think is where you're going to have it. And we can have some presentations prepared in that regard that can touch more specifically on the aspects and differences.
The intent for when it comes to the executive committee will be an open hearing, public hearing, with public comment and public testimony, so that we have public input when we discern whether or not we want to address that. Supervisor Mahalik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that most of this body is familiar with the difference between a county coordinator and a county administrator. The primary difference, at least from my perspective, from a county administrator to going to a county executive, is our county administrator is an at-will employee, based on what this body chooses to have as regards to sitting in that seat for the county administrator. So that's something can be terminated. Obviously, with a county executive, this is now an elected position, so whoever gets elected gets a 4-year term. And it's, so that, from my perspective, is the primary difference in the fact that they are much more the leader. They are not beholding to the county board, they're beholding to the electorate, just as we all are. And that's really the biggest difference. We do obviously have I think, a very important role to play, but the biggest thing, like you said, is veto power, then it's 2/3 to go around. That really is the biggest thing, is that when a person does get elected to this position, they're a 4-year elected position. Generally, I'm assuming it would be 4-year.
It would be.
Because that's set by state statute, as my understanding. I know ours is only 2, but theirs is 4.
That's correct.
So,
The
okay, thank-
59.17 lays all that out.
Right, thank you very much.
Sure.
Supervisor Bullock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, would there be any difference in the role of the board chairperson once there's a county executive in place?
It's a big raise.
Yeah, the duties of the chairman, right now, the chairperson sets agenda, that won't change, and do the meetings, and I'm the leader of, you guys have elected the chairperson to be the leader of the county, and for lack of a better word, this mug is the face of the county. But as to Supervisor Mahalik's point, I'm accountable to less than 4% of the population of this county. I'm elected by 4,600 out of 135,000. You guys elect me and elect the chair and hold the chair accountable. I really think the people deserve to elect their leader, to have that leader articulate the goals, the vision, the priorities for the county, and to run on those, and to have the people make those choices rather than 26 diverse supervisors coming together and making a choice for their leader. This way, it's put back in the hands of the people. The people make that decision. And I think it's important, especially the way things are going economically, with development. I think we need that position to really put this county in the position that needs to be going forward.
So the role of the chairperson does or doesn't really change much?
Doesn't really change a lot. The face of the county would become the county executive. That person would be out front. That person would be driving the goals, and the people that would be the leader for the people. So, the way the board works is kind of the same way. You know, every important decision monetarily wise, we still hold the purse strings. If there's a veto power for the county executive, but we would have a 2/3 majority to override a veto. And most of the decisions we make involve a 2/3 majority. So a lot of it would change, but it's not a drastic change in my mind, at least.
Also, the county board chair would fill the role of county executive if that office would be vacated for any reason for a period of time till a new appointment is made. The board would be able to appoint a county executive in the event that office is vacated due to incapacity or removal from office, which would be done, potentially could be done by the governor.
Supervisor Brandt.
The one thing that I kind of question is what type of qualifications does someone need to have to be a county executive? Well, I mean, and this is what I have to point out, that those individuals like Josh and I have working for me, an administrator in the village of Slinger. I know there's an administrator in the city of Hartford. These people go to college and go to countless seminars and whatnot to be up on running government and how to manage people. And I think that you could end up with somebody running on a popularity contest. You could be, I'm going to lower taxes by 50%, and oh yeah, let's elect this guy. But but maybe they don't know how to run a county, or let alone a village or a city. And you're stuck with that person for 4 years unless you recall them. I think you got to think hard and long about this. I understand what the county board chairman is saying, but I'm really not too much in favor of a county exec. One of my administrators was in their previous employment was an assistant to the Milwaukee County exec prior to Walker. And I'm telling you, he got Milwaukee County into one heck of a mess when it came to their pension program and whatnot. So just beware.
Supervisor Sorcy.
All right.
Supervisor Sorcy.
Okay, I just wondered if I was on. When I heard this was going on here, I actually got on the phone and called my connections around the country and around the state. I talked to Supervisor Willie Johnson in Milwaukee and Teddy Lipscomb and a lot of the other guys, and I said, what's the deal with what Abley? I mean, is there the clash? Because I see it clashing all the time. And he says, he can veto us, we can veto him, you still need 2/3. But I said, is there any big drawback? I mean, is any like you pushing this guy or pushing that guy out? He said, no, everybody has their say so. He can veto all he wants. You get the 2/3, then you're okay. Then I talked to some people in Dunn County and way up north, and of course they weren't for it. But I'd like to see some more on it. I mean, some more information on how people are doing. I talked to Michael Mayo the other day, vice chairman out there, and he was filling me on some things. But I'd like to see more information on this.
Supervisor Dice.
When issues like this come before the county board, I really try and keep an open mind so that I can weigh everything I hear and make the best decision I can. I'm having a problem with this only because we have an administrator who is very capable, who knows this county very well, who's done an admirable job since he has been appointed the administrator for Washington County. And I don't know why we want to look at this now. I see down the road at some point, realistically, we will have a county exec. I just don't think now is the right time. Everything is working well. I know some will say, well, Josh could run for that position, but so could others who are well-connected in this community, but who have never really, as Mr. Brandt professed, run a county, know how to run a county, understand how a county functions, but yet could be elected into this position. And that would be what the voters want, but might not be the best thing for the county. So I guess if we had an administrator that everyone was very unhappy with and not doing a great job, this might be something to consider, but we aren't there. So as far as I'm concerned, let's put this off. This is not the right time for it. That's how I feel right now. Thank you.
Well, the reason it's coming up now, I've been working hard to work with other county board chairs to try to accomplish things. I run into a lot of roadblocks as a county board chair. I work through other county board chairs. Some of them have to work through administrators that are obstinate. Some of them have to work through executives that run the show. In order for us to for lack of a better word, get a seat at the big boys table and actually work with other counties and get some of these initiatives done, we need a leader that's totally accountable. Like I said, I'm accountable to a small portion. What I say, I mean, I work with some of these county board chairs and they're all over these ideas. Yeah, let's get this done. Let's do this. We can work together on this, and that's where it ends. You know, we don't move any further. And it's not for lack of effort on our part and from our administrator's part. It's a lack of other agencies wanting to adjust and to work with other jurisdictions to make government work better. So that's why it's coming up now. The 2020 census is going to cause all of our districts to change a little bit. We're going to have to redraw the lines for the population. We're going to be one of the top 10 population-wise. That's why I reconvened the Structure Advisory Committee, Board Structure Advisory Committee, so we can take a look at how our committees are set up, and, you know, do we need to look at how many supervisors we have and that part, and bring people in and talk to a lot of different people, bring a lot of information, try to discern where we need to go from there. And then we need to look at, you know, we're not looking at right this particular time, but the time is actually here. You see the development at Foxconn and how that's going to affect us economically with development. You see what's going on at Holy Hill Road in Germantown with Briggs and Stratton coming in. There's another 800,000 square feet coming in and more on that. So we're looking, this expansion is coming, it's now. There's opportunities for this county that we need to take advantage of. My job as county chair is to get our county set in the best position possible moving forward into the future. I'm going to be here till 2022, so I'm not going to be here in the future, in the long-range future, but we need to set, my opinion is we need to set the table now. We really need to look at this, and we need to keep an open mind in this and get all the information. And if this is the way to go, we need to act on it. And, you know, I don't want to be left behind. We're not doing our job as a board if we're left behind. So this is something that's very important. And, you know, I've talked to people too from, you know, Supervisor Sorcy's talked to people that are beyond our county. When I went to the NACO, we spent a weekend in Washington DC, and I'm talking to county execs, county administrators, county board members from all over the country, and trying to get a handle on this, talking about what our economic development is looking like and how everything's going to expand and how we need to be able to be out in front of that to manage that. So I'm for the information I've seen, and you guys all get a chance to see too, it becomes pretty apparent to me that that's the way to go. Supervisor Kelly.
So consider this a statement and a question. In light of the ad hoc committee for the restructuring, is it your intention that the issue of reducing the size of the board or possibly restructuring committees separate from county executive discussions? Can you be, or will you be treating those as basically separate discussions?
Yeah, it'll be going to the executive committee along with, like I said, a public hearing, and have people come to testify, not only to testify to the board and give us additional information, but allowing the public to have voice there too.
I just think it would, I think both of those are pretty big issues, the biggest issues for this board and that it's faced in a long time. And I would suggest that trying to tackle both of those at the same time might be a pretty big bite. And trying to move forward with them as separate issues, I think at least makes it a little bit more palatable.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's why, one of the reasons I decided to have it go to executive committee, and take it off the table of the Structure Advisory Committee, rather than muddy that committee up. And this way, the executive committee gets to look at it, and I'm hoping that all the other supervisors here are gonna want to attend that meeting to have their input too. And that way, there's no confusion between the two, because they're really two separate issues.
Good.
Supervisor Schleif.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree wholeheartedly with Supervisor Brandt and Supervisor Dice. There are some traps in this whole system. I agree with some of the benefits you've brought up, so I look forward to hearty discussions on this, much more fact-finding. Like Supervisor Kelling said, this is a big decision for this board, and I think we better be careful about it. Thank you.
Supervisor Bosser.
I would echo the statements about being careful, but I would also caution everybody not to be too quick to entrench themselves into a position of being a no vote on this when it might be a good thing to do, or it might not. I think we need to gather all the facts. I think we need to not think of this issue as a referendum on Josh. Josh is doing a great job. I think we would all agree with that. That doesn't mean that staying the same is going to work for us as we go through a period of rapid growth, which may be on the very near horizon for us. So that's, the other thing, I think we need to rely on the voters in this county to be savvy. We need to not undersell them. We have smart voters in this county who are involved, who know what's going on. We're not Milwaukee County where everybody complains about a boondoggle trolley, and yet they reelect the mayor who put in the boondoggle trolley. We have smart voters here who we can depend on to not elect a total nincompoop. But even if they would, they could also hire somebody to support them on those administrative functions that they're weak on. And I think as a board, if that would happen, we would support them in hiring the people they need. I guess that's what I got at the moment.
Thank you. Supervisor Krebs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would that be a 2/3 vote of this board to make that change to executive?
No,
Or what?
it would be just a resolution
Just a
that you would
simple
pass.
majority vote and we could pass that?
Right. Once you pass the resolution, and once the office is created, it can only be abolished then by a petition and referendum from the public. So once you create the office, you essentially can't uncreate it. So,
What if, you said, you talked about redistricting with the census. Would this happen after the redistricting then? Or what would the timeline be? It doesn't have to be when we redistrict. That's the
Right.
size of the board
The
issue.
board size and the
I
board
know you're
structure.
talking about separating these issues out with the executive and the steering committee, but this discussion here, they're coming right back together
Yep.
again a little bit here. So I'm getting a little confused as the timeline for some of this stuff.
Yeah, well, the timelines will,
The executive is any time, correct?
what's that?
The executive position
If-
could be any time.
If we would choose to go to executive, we have 180 days after 120 days. So if we would choose to do that this year, it would be an April 2020 election. Same when everybody on the board would go for election. If we would restructure our board size and the committees, that would take effect in 2022.
Okay. Thank you.
Supervisor McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple comments. I do really believe that the difference between the board size and the format, they are very separate. I believe as you just pointed out, the timeline, it's imperative for everybody to understand that timeline because the board side relative to the census, the redistricting, and what would happen can be done later. I think if you're going to change the format, I think the sooner that is done will allow for the effective use of time with this new committee, which I think is a great idea. It's worked well in the past. I don't have any, everybody got together, the entire board. I think we were 30 at the time years ago, and it worked out well. Everybody had a voice. Everybody got to discuss that redistricting at that time. When we shrunk the board, we had ample time for discussion. I think we'll have plenty of time for the discussion for the reduction potentially of the size of the board. There's no secret. I've tried to reduce this board dramatically. I think it was 6 unsuccessful times, and then eventually I compromised and went with the flow to try to at least get it down to where we are today, even though I would have loved to have seen it at 11. And I truly believe we could have accomplished a couple more things at that level. But that be it, we're at now at 26. I think that is a completely different discussion. But I think the sooner we address this, I think it will help in that discussion, and I think it will also help going forward. And the question is, well, why now? When you have a new board, which right now I don't consider this board a new board. This board has been here. Everybody's had a year under their, sitting in this chair. It takes time to understand government. It's taken me a long, long time to try to understand it. I still can honestly say it's an animal that I don't fully understand compared to the private sector and how things work. But this discussion came up 17 years ago. There was a large contingent group, I would say, at that time from West Bend that brought forth the idea of going to executive back then. The compromise is where we are today. Previous to that, the compromise with a coordinator position that had more power. I believe there's been 4 iterations of changes to this position, and the ultimate change is to executive. So this isn't something new. Why now? Well, you could say that about anything. So for those people, I respect everybody's, discussion today and the points. Mr. Brandt brought up a very good point. I've also always said too, you could have a sheriff, and I see a couple people in the audience here. I felt very uncomfortable at times where you could have someone running as sheriff that has no skill set, background, or whatnot. So, but I do have faith in and I think Bossert said it respectfully, Supervisor Bossert, that you have to have faith in the voters. I do. I mean, it's a great country, it's a great county. What other counties do, I don't know, but our county, I've been here 5 generations, my family. I have a lot of faith in our voters. They're very smart voters, in my opinion. They ask good questions. The discourse has been, I think, tremendous the last 6 years, from when I first started on the board, so that even though we all can have different positions and disagree, I think the discourse has been good. So I respect what everybody else has said, and I'll give you another one. We had a position where at one time it was elected to be the coroner. Now, my grandfather was a doctor, and he ran for coroner. He lost at one time, and he pointed out to me, do you realize you don't have to have any medical background at all at one time to be a coroner? And I thought that was crazy. We changed the position. We changed things. It happens. I do have faith, though, that for the size of this county, that the people would find the right person. We may have that person now. There might be someone else out there. I don't know. Josh left the room, I think, on purpose. I'm sure it's uncomfortable, but I don't think it's about the person. And Chris, I respect what you're saying. I don't think there's anything wrong with Josh right now. I don't think there's anything wrong with our system right now. I believe this will get us to the next level. I do have an issue, and I always have had an issue, where, as Don said, it's 4,600 people elect each one of us. At one time, it was even less than that. Now it's up to 4,600. To truly represent the county and not be beholden to that 4,600, I represent Erin and some of Hartford. To truly vote and to truly support different ideas that may be tough decisions within our county, I believe the whole county needs to be thought of, and I think an elected official in the executive role would have the most influence and power to do what's right for this county. I've seen some of the supervisors over the years buckle down to pressure from a select minority that come in before us, whether it's now through email or what used to be phone calls or in person to your house and different things or whatnot. And that select minority has overpowered supervisors. Just unbelievably so. And I felt really sad for those supervisors that they did not have the ability to stand up and do what was right. I believe in the executive format, it allows that person, whether it's a woman or a man, whoever gets elected to that position, to represent the entire county for what's good for the county. And if they make a decision that isn't in that, they're out. If we make a decision right now, it could be for your district, you have two hats on. And I've always thought that the executive format would represent that in the best light. So that's part of the reason why I appreciate Don bringing it forward. I guess I pushed it pretty hard. It just took a long time to get this far. And again, I've compromised. I've gone along with all these different changes over the years. The last one is executive. And I do think it's the right time to have the discussion. Everybody will have a vote. It will come back to the board. I do think, and just to be real clear though, it has to be separate, in my opinion, from the size. It really does, because I think once you decide on this, that helps you with the size. Because I think the roles can be different and more efficient, and there's a lot of reasons why you can make changes later. A couple things that'll be brought out, but I think it's very important. The fear of losing the power, we changed the rules. I don't remember what year it was, but we changed the rules for budgetary approvals. There's a reason why on the bottom of now it's on your iPad, but it used to be on the paper, on the bottom where it says the fiscal impact, that wasn't here 16 years ago. The reason why we put that in is so it was very transparent to the public and to the supervisors, because I was annoyed as a finance guy, I couldn't tell what the hell it was gonna cost us to do things. We put that there, and then we changed the vote for the number that had to approve budgetary things. This 2/3 veto power it's a direct correlation, I think, with what we're running now. Years ago, that wouldn't be the case. But right now, I don't see where anybody could come in and dramatically change what this county has done. We've had, the things that have improved within this county over the last 16 years, whatever, there's been just marked improvement. We've got efficient. We're going in the right path. So I have nothing negative to say for what's happened right now and why now. Is there something wrong? Just to clear the record, I don't think there's anything wrong at all. I just think this helps us get to the next level. I think it was discussed, whether it was 17, 16, 14 years, 12 years ago, when we changed the last 8 years ago. It doesn't matter. I think it's a good discussion to have. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But I think this is the right time to discuss it in between terms for everybody, so that everybody's informed, everybody understands where their roles are. And then again, for the next people that are gonna run next year, they'll understand what format they're in. So there's a whole bunch of other things. I don't wanna bore everybody with a bunch of timing things, but and there were some very valid questions asked. And again, I respect what you guys are saying. I do believe that an individual that would be appropriate would get elected. Just like I think it's been appropriate the way the sheriff, my fear of having a sheriff that wasn't qualified has never come to fruition. So I think that was one of my fears when I first got on board, but the people are smart in our county. I really believe in that. And so I'm thankful, Don, that you brought it up. I'm glad you put it on the agenda. I think the transparency is really good. I'm hoping everybody that has your concerns, please get it to everybody that's on executive. You elected us to help represent you. Please get it to us to ask those questions. That public hearing, this is the first I've heard of that you're doing it that way. That's great. I think that's a great idea to go on the record for people for and against, and then there's a record of it, and I look forward to the future discussion. Thanks, Don.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is important that when we make our decisions, we make them based upon facts and not about fears or assumptions, right? Mike Basil, good friend of mine, when I first came on the board, 2012, was a great proponent of county executive. Came to me and asked me about county executive. I told him, not on my watch. And as we've evolved, even in the last 5 years, things have changed so rapidly. Things are happening so fast that if we don't act appropriately and if we don't have a strong leader that gets us a place at the table, we are going to be left behind. And then we're going to have to answer to our constituents, why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do this when we had the opportunity? So, take the information, filter through it like I did. If you come to the same decision, great. If we don't come to that decision, that's what we're going to do. but I think now is the time. Sorry, Supervisor Mary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brad, could you restate the timeline on this, please?
Certainly. So, for this office to be created and to take effect next year, the board would have to pass a resolution by no later than December 9th of this year. So we're probably looking, unless you have a special meeting, probably around the time of the November county board meeting. And the reason for that is because the statutes say that the election for county executive can be held no sooner than the first spring election occurring at least 120 days after creation of office. So if you don't hit that window, you can't have that election then until 2021. So the timing is crucial on this. So if you're going to start that discussion, correct now is the time, because it's a pretty tight window.
Well, following up to that, if our current county administrator doesn't pursue this as an elected official, do we not have a contractual obligation to him?
You do. And if that office that he holds is eliminated, there are payout provisions in his contract that the county would be required to honor.
Supervisor Bossert.
The December 9th date sounds a little strange because the period to pull papers for April elections is December 1st to December 30th. And people can actually pull papers before that, but that's the signature time frame. If we approve this on December 9th instead of October or November, would there still be enough time for people to gather signatures who want to run for this office? And how many signatures would be required?
You can approve it at any time, just
Well,
that the
right.
deadline would be that December 9th date in order to hit that 120-day window so that you could have that election occur
But thinking
in
about the
spring.
timing with when we pull papers for county board positions, which are also April elections, would there be adequate time to get signatures then?
I guess I can't speak to that. I don't know. It would depend. But I can only tell you when you could have that election, and then you have to count back 120 days. It might impact someone's ability or desire to run under those circumstances. I don't know.
Well-
You probably know better than I do about pulling papers.
I'm not talking about impact, I'm not talking about desire to run. I'm talking about giving the statutory time to collect signatures, because and maybe Ashley is more familiar with this, but isn't the statute that if you're running for a spot in April, you collect signatures from December 1st through January 2nd? Is that correct?
Supervisor McKeon, yeah.
Yeah, so just, that's why I really admire Don bringing this forward now. That's the last day. There's no intent to try to get to the last day. In my opinion, I don't know what everybody else would think, is that you do it far sooner, Mr. Bossert. Why would you want to put pressure on anybody? So the idea that we brought it forth here today, what month are we in? It's a full year, it's almost a full year, so that we can try to get this hashed out before, so in fairness to everybody, whether we agree or don't agree, everybody knows where it is. So there's no intent to try to get December 9th. If it got to that, I think that would be ludicrous that we would try to push it on anybody. The idea is to try to have that decision sooner, in my opinion.
And I want to be clear, that was just a question that was asked
Right.
about timing, and I wanted to answer that. I don't disagree with what you're saying, Supervisor.
As a board, our goal is to try to have this wrapped up in August, September, maybe October at the latest, so that whoever might have an interest will have time to pull papers, gather the signatures. And how many signatures are required for this? Is it the same as county clerk, county sheriff?
I haven't looked into that. I don't know.
Okay.
Supervisor Basil.
Thank you. Supervisor Chairman, or Supervisor Creekfall, am I dreaming? After 10 years, I can't believe I'm finally having this discussion in the county chambers. I cannot believe it. I'm ecstatic. I just want to tell my fellow supervisors, don't just look at what other counties do in the state of Wisconsin. Get out of the state of Wisconsin. Check in with Minnesota. Check in with Iowa. I did that when I got on the board. We're so outdated with the way we run things in this state. It's amazing. So you want to do some checking. Go check with, there's Wikipedia. You can find a county in Minnesota and Iowa that's pretty much the same size as ours, same population. you find out, you call over, talk to those guys. When they find out what we have here, the first 2 minutes is just nothing but laughing on the phone because they can't believe to how we operate. So just go check them people out once also before you make your decision. And I'm looking forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, what I found talking to people at the NACO conference is most county boards they're full-time people. They're elected, they're 5 to 7, sometimes 3. They're bearing they're called administrative, they're called executive, they're called CEO, they're called managers. They're elected by the entire county. And each supervisor that is full-time is elected by a much bigger electorate. I mean, even if you look at just surrounding counties, when we look at how many, getting back to the structure, the average is 8,100 people that a supervisor represents. We represent 4,600. So, and going to the tables, talking to people, and I always start off, what county, what state you from, what county, and how many people you have on your board, and then they ask me, they turn around and ask me how many hours you're on your board, and I go 26, and they look at me and they said, and I said it gets better. I says everything we do financially is a 2/3 majority, and they just kind of cover their eyes and kind of shake their heads a little bit. So, as Supervisor McCune says, and Supervisor Basil, we're a little bit behind the times in the state of Wisconsin, and things are happening, and we need to take advantage of them. So I hope everyone takes the time to attend and listens and learns. Right? Supervisor Galitz.
Thank you. I think to some of the other comments already been said about being cautious, and I guess one thing that I will always think about, mind you, I've only been here for a year, is so what haven't we been able to accomplish based on our current makeup? So that's something that I'm going to be thinking about, as well as, alternatively, if we had a different structure, what could we accomplish? I think that's what you're saying,
right.
Chairman Creedfall. So that's something that sticks in my mind. I don't have the institutional history and knowledge that many of you have of, so what went wrong, what went south in the past that we could have done that we weren't able to do based on our structure, and trying to project that forward. What could we do if we had a different structure?
Yeah. Financially, we're set. We've done a real good job financially, but our challenges moving forward are to being able to manage the economic development that's going to come here. I mean, there's so many things on the table. Our manufacturing workforce in 10 years, 50% of them are going to be in retirement. And with the economic development coming forward, industry, commerce coming this way, we need to have people to work here too. So we need to bring all those people to the table, from businesses, from the colleges, from the tech schools, and we need to go to the places where there are people that are available to work. The city of Milwaukee is one of them. So we're going to have to look to recruit people to come to Washington County. So there's so many things on the table that I don't want us to fail at. I want us to make certain that we take advantage of those opportunities. Okay. Seeing no other questions, we are hereby adjourned.